But these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They get money.
The ICE protesters are pure evil.
Mr. Reagan.
All right, before we start, I've got a great new sponsor for the show, Gold Co. If you want to diversify your portfolio, protect your savings, safeguard your retirement, try investing in gold with Gold Co. Go to MrReaganLikesGold.com or call 844-696-GOLD or click on the link in the description below. There is a twisted irony playing out in Los Angeles right now. Masked protesters are throwing bricks at police, burning cars, and looting stores, or at least they were at the time I recorded this video. These rioters claim that they're standing up for innocent families, but ICE isn't rounding up your neighbor who overstayed his visa. They're not grabbing the lady who cleans houses to feed her kids. They're arresting violent criminals, people with murder charges, sexual assault convictions, gang affiliations. According to ICE's own data, over 75% of those arrested in these targeted operations have prior criminal convictions or pending criminal charges. Leftists think that these protesters are heroes, but they're not. These so-called protesters are actually protecting predators. They are protecting the worst scum imaginable. And the irony about all of this, the truth that you will not hear from the mainstream nightly news report, the victims of these illegal alien criminals are primarily other illegal aliens. So when these idiots protest ICE, when they block federal agents from doing their jobs, they're not protecting grandmothers and children. They're protecting the monsters who prey on grandmothers and children. When a twice-deported sex offender targets children in an immigrant neighborhood, those parents are often afraid to call the police. They're scared that they might get deported themselves. So the predator keeps hunting. The rapist keeps raping. The killer keeps killing. These protesters are literally protecting the worst criminals in America. As I'm sure you've heard, Trump has now authorized 2,000 California National Guard troops to move in and protect federal buildings because local leaders have refused to do their jobs. This was the first time since the 1960s that a president federalized the National Guard without the governor's consent. Gavin Newsom, the clown governor of California, called this National Guard deployment reckless.
He's acting recklessly. He's acting unlawfully. He's putting people's lives at risk. And it's my job to clean up Donald Trump's mess.
You know what's actually reckless, Gavin? Letting a sexual predator continue hunting children because you're too woke to let ICE do their job. Newsom announced that California will sue the Trump administration. He called the Guard deployment unlawful, and he's framed the riots as entirely Donald Trump's fault. He says Donald Trump wants a war in the streets.
They help create these conditions to inflame them. This is Donald Trump's mess. We'll hold everybody to a higher level of accountability, but that's not what Trump is after. He's not for peacemaking. He's here for war. He wants a civil war on the streets of America, not just here. He's testing the boundaries by nationalizing the federal guard. These are acts of authoritarians. Period. Full stop.
Newsom would rather have violent criminals roaming free than admit Trump is right about anything. Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, she's not just a leftist, she's an actual communist. In the 1970s, she traveled to Cuba to harvest sugarcane for Fidel Castro. She was part of the Venceremos Brigade, a Marxist organization, and when Castro died, she said, "It's a great loss to the people of Cuba." Sure, tell that to my buddy's father, who literally escaped Cuba to come to the U.S. I'm sure he would agree with you. This woman, Karen Bass, who literally worked for a communist dictator, is now ordering the LAPD not to cooperate with ICE, even when they are arresting child predators. She knows that these are violent criminals that ICE is deporting, but she doesn't care because in her Marxist worldview, criminals are just victims of the system.
If immigration raids had not happened here, we would not have the disorder that went on last night. And knowing that in a city like Los Angeles, and we had talked about this for a long time, that has a very sophisticated long-term immigrant rights organizations and institutions, that if these random raids were going to happen, then there was going to be the danger of a backlash. And you add on to that the National Guard, and it felt like fuel for a fire that was unnecessary.
In 2017, the New York Times published an article titled "Too Scared to Report Sexual Abuse." In this article, they interviewed a woman named Christina, whose husband beat her and threatened her for years. She finally got the courage to report him, but then she backed out because she feared deportation. She said, "I'm scared that they'll find me." This is the nature of illegal immigrant communities all over the world. These communities naturally become hunting grounds for predators. These are places where violent men beat their wives, rape women, abuse children, and they know their victims will not call for help. This is actually exacerbated by the sanctuary city phenomenon, where leftist DAs often neglect to prosecute illegal aliens. Now, victims are even less incentivized to report crimes because if the criminal that they turned in discovers that they ratted them out, well, he might just get deported out of the realm of the living. And so here's something the mainstream media will never tell you. Some illegal aliens actually support ICE raids. It only makes sense. If you see your family and friends being exploited by criminals and Homan is out there rounding them up, it's a rational thing to tip off ICE. That's why the tip line is anonymous. 866-347-2423. And there is a website, ice.gov/tipline. Super easy to remember. So you better believe that a lot of their tips are coming from illegal aliens themselves. But the media will never investigate that news story. They don't want you to hear from the illegal immigrant mother whose daughter was raped by an illegal alien criminal. They don't want you to hear from the construction worker whose cousin was murdered by MS-13. Those voices would destroy the narrative. My brother actually had an interesting idea the other day. He said, what if we leaked the location of the next ICE raid? Make it somewhere strategic, like a rock quarry. And then when these protesters all show up and interfere, we just round them up and process them for obstruction. Maybe we even check their immigration status while we're at it. This would probably only work once or twice before they copped on, but it would at least expose the percentage of protesters that are actually illegal aliens, how many are fake paid agitators, and it would unmask a few of these Antifa thugs. I say, let's do it. It's worth a shot. And my dad, he's got a great idea how to end all of this immediately. It's so simple, yet brilliant. I'll get into that, and I'll tell you who's really behind all of these riots in one moment. First, of course, I have to talk about my amazing sponsor. Do you ever feel like your body's stress switch is permanently stuck in the on position, like you can't shut your mind off at night? That was me, seriously. But then I discovered what was really happening. It wasn't just stress, it was a magnesium deficiency. That's when I discovered Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. This changed everything. Within days of taking it, I noticed I was falling asleep faster, waking up refreshed, and I was handling daily stress much better. What makes Magnesium Breakthrough different? Well, most supplements, they only contain one or two types of magnesium. Magnesium Breakthrough delivers all 7 forms that your body needs, all in one capsule. And this balances your stress response and supports your sleep quality. The results speak for themselves. Over 1,500 5-star reviews from people who have reclaimed their calm, their sleep, their energy. And right now, you can save 10% when you go to bioptimizers.com/Mr. Reagan and use code Mr. Reagan. They even offer a full 365-day guarantee, so there's zero risk to try it. Don't just manage stress, break through it with Magnesium Breakthrough. Again, that's bioptimizers.com/Mr. Reagan and use the code Mr. Reagan. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you will make sure that your monthly supply is guaranteed. So my dad was talking to me the other day about all this, and he's had this idea that he's been promoting since like 2020. And this idea would solve the rioting protesters problem once and for all. Trump needs to sign an executive order making it illegal for protesters to wear masks, then push Congress to make it permanent. If you're protesting for a legitimate cause, a cause you genuinely believe in, why do you need to hide your face? The only reason to wear a mask at a protest is because you're planning to do something illegal. Or maybe you're here illegally yourself. Or you're a federal agent running a psyop. And yeah, it would completely destroy fake white nationalist groups like Patriot Front that stage psyop protests to make conservatives look bad. You know who else wore masks to avoid accountability? The KKK. And we already have anti-mask laws in many states from when we were fighting the Klan. So, Democrats should really support this, unless they're admitting that they're on the same side as the KKK, which historically would be accurate. Seriously, though, we have a real problem in America with violent protesters, fake paid protesters, and psyops. A ban would end all of that. And these protests, these riots in LA, this whole thing, it's far more sinister than you might imagine. The amazing X account, Data Republican, just exposed the powerful players behind these protests. Multiple NGOs are involved. This is not grassroots. This is not spontaneous. This is a coordinated, funded operation. These rioters are not just concerned citizens. These are paid agitators.
But these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They get money.
To block ICE vehicles, to protect rapists and murderers from deportation. Take a look at the signs that these protesters are holding. Some of them are handwritten, okay, but most of them are printed. And they were designed by an organization called the Party for Socialism and Liberation. PSL is a communist political party. And their primary funding source is even more sinister. A billionaire named Neville Singham. This guy actively pushes Chinese propaganda around the globe. He gave over $20 million to these groups, the same ones behind the Columbia University protests. And then there's CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigration Rights of Los Angeles. And here's the really messed up thing about them. This organization is funded by the California state government. $34 million in California government grants. They also got some federal tax money. So American tax dollars are literally funding the riots. What's happening in Los Angeles is not a protest. It's a playbook. And when you trace the players, the money, the tactics, it matches almost exactly the blueprint of color revolutions used in foreign nations to topple governments. Except this time, it's happening here, and it's funded with your tax dollars. Data Republican made the following astute observation. She wrote, "Flags are an important part of engineered color revolutions." On the other hand, the Babylon Bee had a pretty good take. They wrote, "Illegal immigrants helpfully wave flags so that ICE knows where to send them." The mainstream media characterizes the ICE raids as some kind of humanitarian crisis. They interview activists, but they never interview the victims of the criminals. They never show the American families destroyed by drunk drivers who've been deported 5 times. They never talk to the young girls trafficked by the cartels, because these things do not fit their narrative. The narrative is that ICE agents are jackbooted thugs, ripping apart loving families, and that these protests are organic expressions of community outrage, and that opposing illegal immigration is racist. The reality is that ICE is removing violent predators who terrorize their own communities, and that these riots are orchestrated by literal communists using our tax dollars, and that the primary victims of illegal alien criminals are other illegal aliens. What Donald Trump, Tom Homan, and ICE are doing is not just good for American citizens, it's actually good for illegal aliens too. And what the protesters are doing is evil. Well, that's it for me. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. And remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much. That is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.